Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the show, a show we call The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. I am Emerson Ncaa, hanging with you for the next 55 minutes, and we're stuffing quite a bit inside said 55 minutes. We're going to do that hockey. We're taking a gander at betting odds for the final stop on the Florida Swing, that's PGA Tour, which DFS plays to chase around the NBA, recapping the initial NFL free agency rush. But first things first, let's begin with the madness, huh? DraftKings contributor Julian Edlow is here to share his best bets for the first 4 games of the NCAA tournament. All right, dude, tonight we have Texas A&M Corpus Christi facing Texas Southern, with the winner facing the number 1 seed in the Midwest, that is Kansas. Southern favored by 3.5 tonight. Which bet stands out to you in this one?
Yeah, these are tough games in the first 4. You have the last bubble teams playing each other, the at-large bids who are all relatively even, and you have 4 of these 16 seeds playing each other, which is tough to gauge. I think this one in particular is the hardest of the first 4 games to bet. So I deferred over to the DraftKings playbook, where Greg Peterson from VSiN has an article, and he actually chose to write up this game. And he's taken the 3.5 points with Texas A&M Corpus Christi, which I generally lean to in these games. We've got Bryant as a 3.5 point dog on Wednesday in the 16 seed game. I do lean towards Bryant in that game and wrote that one up in my article. If you're getting over a possession in these games with 2 16 seeds playing for their lives, trying to make the tournament and play a team, in these 1 seeds that they never book on their regular season schedules, I want to take the points. So, you've got Southern, a team that turns the ball over at a higher rate. I think that A&M Corpus Christi will be able to take advantage of that and keep this at least within a possession.
Yeah, I know they have lack of tourney experience, but it's one of those balanced group of seniors, right? And you see those teams kind of make a run or at least crack that first day of the tournament here, dude.
Unless you're St. Bonaventure, then you're a team that just loses every game and costs you my money.
Easy. All right, chill out. Second game in action today features Wyoming against Indiana. Follow Jules on Twitter if you need more angry tweets about St. Bonaventure. These 2 are competing to be the 12 seed that will face 5-seeded St. Mary's in the East. So Indiana's favored here by 4. What's the best bet in this matchup, dude?
Speaking of 4-point spreads, the Bonnies play Colorado in the NIT tonight. They're 4-point underdogs. lay the 4 with Colorado. The Bonnies are done. Sticking to this game with a 4-point spread, though, I think that the number's going in the right direction. This one opened, I think, 3.5 on DK Sportsbook when we were doing the live show on Sunday night. It's up to 4. I agree with the movement. I think that Indiana is the side. Wyoming's a good team. They snuck in. Some of those, teams that got snubbed, I think maybe deserve to be in over Wyoming. They started the season 21-3, and they have limped down the stretch to get in. They finished 4-5. So they haven't even been that good lately. Whereas you've got Indiana, they're on a 6-1 against the spread run, made a deep run in the Big Ten tournament, knocked off the 1 seed in Indiana, had Iowa, the eventual tournament winner, on the ropes, but lost on a close to a buzzer beater 3 off the glass. I think that Indiana is going to be the right side of this one. Just better team, 2 teams going in opposite directions, with Wyoming trending down, as are the Bonnies.
All right, we hit on tonight's games. Let's take a look at the full bracket now. First round starts on Thursday, dude. What do you have your eye on in the first round? So give us some of your strongest plays.
Yeah, I like the Friday card better than the Thursday card, but there are a couple spots that I really like on Thursday. And I want to start with one that has everybody's attention. How many people are taking the South Dakota State Jackrabbits as that 13 seed to upset 4-seed Providence, whether it's betting them as the short underdog, whether it's putting them, advancing them in their brackets? Disrespect to Providence, disrespect all season. And I know the analytics don't necessarily back them up. And the argument is that they've been a lucky team. Providence has been lucky, and that is true, but they can also be lucky and good. It's not a coincidence that they're winning all these games in crunch time. Now you're giving me a South Dakota State team that they've lost. They won every game in conference. They were like 20-0 or 21-0. They also lost a game as a 22-point favorite this season. And every time they played any level of competition that was close to Providence, they lost and failed to cover. I think the closest example was probably being 12.5-point underdogs against Alabama, and they lost that game by 16. So I don't know why, just because they steamrolled in the Summit League, that all of a sudden they're going to be able to play with competition that they haven't been able to play with all season. And Providence just keeps winning. So Providence money line, I bet it at -130. Forget the points. Disrespect. When are you going to be able to just take a short money line for a 4 seed against 13? Providence is going to win this game.
Final Four futures are up on the DK Sportsbook as well, dude. So the 1 seeds here, Gonzaga, Arizona, Kentucky, Baylor, all with the best odds to make it there. But where's the value in these futures, though? Like, is it a team not in the top 4? What do you think?
So there's 2 higher seeds that I have in the national championship game in my bracket that I think are good bets. And that would be Arizona as a 1 seed. I think they're around +150. And I just think the way that they're rolling right now, without their starting point guard, they took down UCLA with style in the Pac-12 championship game. Arizona's big, versatile. They play both ends of the floor. And I like what their side of the bracket looks like. So I think Arizona's going to get there. And I think Kentucky, as a 2 seed out of the East, they got an injured Baylor squad on their side. They got a Purdue team that can't seem to put it together on their side. I love what Kentucky has. And if they meet Gonzaga in the Final Four, I've got Kentucky in that game. So Kentucky and Arizona there. If you want to look a little deeper, obviously Gonzaga should go to the Final Four. They're the best team. But if you want to look in their bracket, like the Arkansas UConn winner, you can get a great plus price on that team to make the Final Four or even the Elite 8. They have what it takes to beat the Zags. The Zags have proven beatable. They lost to Duke. They lost to Alabama. They've lost silly games. So that's where I would take a long shot. And then I think that the Midwest is probably the most open region. I think that Kansas loses to Iowa. So I think Iowa is potentially a trendy future worth getting into there. And on the bottom, I think if we get an LSU-Auburn Sweet 16 game, all SEC, I don't think LSU is going to back down in that game. I think LSU could get into the Sweet 16 Elite 8 here and maybe even play play Iowa in that Elite 8 game.
Before you take off here, dude, before the action gets started, let's get your take here on a champion, because Gonzaga is favored at +300. But would you be looking at someone else, maybe someone with a little longer odds? I know the Zags have been number 1 for most of the season, number 1 overall seed again, and for a good reason.
Yeah, they're good, but I can't take them. They've made a couple of national championship games recently and obviously lost them. They just can't seem to get over the hump, and I don't think this team is nearly as good as last year's team that wound up losing to Baylor. So they're going to be in the mix. I think they should be in the Final Four, although watch out for that UConn-Arkansas winner. But I can't take +300 on a champion. So I said I think that my national championship game in my bracket is Arizona and Kentucky. So those are the 2 teams I'm going to look at. I think they have the best path to the Final Four, and I think that they're the 2 most matchup-proof teams in the tournament. Great guard play, good size in the middle, a lot of things that will well-coached, a lot of experience, 2 things that will serve you well in this tournament. So those are the 2 teams I'm looking at, an Arizona-Kentucky final.
All right, dude. You're bound for Las Vegas, right?
Vegas, baby.
All right.
They better watch out. I might win all the money in town. They're going to go out of business.
Yeah. Oh, wait. He's going to be on from Vegas? You're going to be joining us from Vegas? Okay, that's news to me. We got producer Slate's in my ear telling me that. That's really good stuff. This is live television, Jules. Okay.
Yeah, man. I don't stop. I'll be up bright and early, crunching the numbers in Vegas. I'm sure I'll look great, bright-eyed and bushy.
Yeah.
Win everybody a lot of money.
After betting the Bonnies in the NIT. That's all you, big boy. All right, we'll talk to you later
We'll talk
to you later this week. Behave yourself out there. The NFL has been absolutely wild after like one day of this free agency period, and we're going to talk about it, the fantasy impact of that with some NFL guys right after this.
Really strong segment.
It actually was. Probably the strongest we've had in quite a while.
Strong to quite strong.
When are you leaving? Man, there's been a lot of NFL news over the past 36 hours or so. We have 3 DraftKings contributors here to kind of break it down for us, give us a fantasy spin on it. Pierce Dietrich, Steve Buchanan, Jeff Ulrich. Good morning, gentlemen. The legal tampering period has begun in the NFL. Plenty of reported moves to discuss. Let's put a fantasy or maybe a sportsbook spin here on some of the biggest headlines right now. Ooh, Jeff, Mitch Trubisky to the Steelers. How much do you love this? What's the fantasy impact of it, dude?
You know, people can joke around and you can make fun of me all you want, pal, but it's a pretty big impact, man. I mean, you look at what the Steelers, what did they do? Their offense just looked terrible last year. They brought in this guy, Matt Yes to Canada, to implement his college scheme and do whatever, and it looked terrible. But why did it look terrible? Well, he uses a lot of motion, or he likes to use a lot of motion during, the pre-snap routine. And that's all great, but none of that works when you have an absolute statue at quarterback, because nobody is afraid of the quarterback who can't run and can't throw it more than 10 yards. So you bring in Trubisky, a guy who can run a little bit. Again, go back to Canada's, college or Canada, however you pronounce it, college resume. He had a guy in Chandler Harnish, over 3,000 yards passing, 1,000 yards rushing. I don't think Mitch Trubisky is going to hit 1,000 yards rushing, but I do think you'll see him rush more than he has at any point in his career. I just think it's a very good spot for fantasy purposes. Regardless of what you think the Steelers are going to do next year, I think this division is a little bit more up for grabs than people think. And yes, let's talk about the sports book. Everyone's mad because the Steelers' odds went down, or the Steelers fans are mad because their odds went down after they signed Trubisky. I think the Steelers are a good bet at plus 650 to win the division right now. All
right, Pierce, despite a few flashes there, like he did struggle to be a consistent fantasy option during his time in Chicago, but this is 100% an upgrade in the passing game for Pittsburgh compared to the past couple of years.
It definitely is. With Roethlisberger, as Jeff mentioned, he had a statue back there, but not only was he a statue, he would just go with his first read every time and would just quickly pass to the first guy, short routes. He had very limited upside. You feel like you got half of the offense with him at quarterback. Now things are going to be open up, and it could go both ways. You're going to get Trubisky taking more chances, and they could lose more games, and there could be more turnovers, but you're going to have a lot more upside. And one of the angles I like is Matt Corral is a first-round draft pick, supposedly, and one of the comparisons they say for him is Mitch Trubisky. So this is basically like drafting a first-round pick and having an experienced first-round pick, also keeping your first-round pick. Trubisky, 29-21 over his career. That's a pretty good number. 93 quarterback rating in 2 of 4 seasons. We give this guy a hard time. I don't know why we expected him to become a Hall of Famer, but he's been a solid quarterback, and Pittsburgh's definitely going to compete in the North.
All right, Steve, what do you think here, dude? I also know the next question will be if the Steelers can even build an offensive line to protect him.
I mean, that's very important too. But now, I mean, this is how low the bar was set when everybody is singing the praises of Mitch Trubisky. What an upgrade for this offense. Mitch Trubisky is in the house. The guy who's been a backup for, 2-3 years now, it feels like. Like, that's how low the bar is. But then you look at the contracts too. Mitch Trubisky is signed through the next 2 years. The other 2 quarterbacks on this team, which is Rudolph and Haskins, are both free agents after this upcoming season. So it feels like this is going to be the guy they're going to. I mean, they can absolutely sign one of those 2 guys, obviously, if things go awry with Trubisky's time with the Steelers, but this feels like the guy they're going to go to. It is an upgrade, but again, the bar is so low. I mean, it's at my shoes. That's where the bar is. I just need to pick it up slightly and we go, the bar has been raised. It's not much to go by, but Trubisky is, like Jeff mentioned, he's going to give them a different dynamic than they've had before. Roethlisberger was such a statue back there. Trubisky will at least be able to run the ball a bit.
Jeff, which of the Jaguars' moves is the best one? Which is the best move the Jaguars made yesterday? And you got to think Trevor Lawrence is a happier man today than he was yesterday.
So, I mean, I guess he is. I don't know. I mean, is it really like, did they really upgrade that much after spending all this money? I mean, Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones. Are we just like bringing in like different types of broken toys? I don't know. But the best signing, I think, was Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram is a player I have been high on since the Giants signed him. The Giants he's partly been his own problem because he hasn't been able to stay on the field. But last year, I mean, or really actually over the last 2 years under Joe Judge, I mean, like they just did not use him properly. This is a player who's got very good downfield speed, and his height and size can let him like win jump balls over smaller cornerbacks. The Giants barely used him in that regard. You look at what Trevor Lawrence did. He targeted the tight end a lot last year. I think bringing in Evan Ingram on a 1-year contract, that's the big thing. It's a 1-year contract. They didn't give him like half the city like they did to Christian Kirk. So I think Evan Ingram is the best signing out of all those moves that they made. You know, I'll let the other guys handle Christian Kirk because, I mean, I don't even really know what to say about it. But I think Evan Ingram was the best signing the Jaguars made. I think he could be a legitimate fantasy, guy you should be targeting as it's kind of like a sneaky sleeper next year for tight ends.
Steve, how much of an improvement in year 2 do you expect from Trevor Lawrence?
Well, I mean, when he actually has some players around him, like, again, the bar is down at my shoes. You don't have to pick it up much to say things are better. But let me just say this, okay? I 100% agree with Jeff. So I'll go on the opposite side. The worst deal that they did was Christian Kirk. Yeah. Like, are you kidding me? To make him have the 6th highest contract amongst all receivers in the NFL. Think about that. The 6th highest contract amongst all the receivers in the NFL. This is somebody who hasn't even eclipsed 1,000 receiving yards in his career. Could he get that in Jacksonville? Maybe, but that's when you pay him after the production has been, shown that he can be that type of guy. And then you have Kirk and Zay Jones on the same team. Like, those two are classing each other. They're basically the same guy. They're both downfield threats. Like, they're not going to mesh well together. So confusing moves should be, par for the course in Jacksonville. I was a fan for 1 week. I needed them to get the Colts out of the playoffs. They did that. I took my fandom, and now I'm out because I didn't like half the moves they made. Evan Ingram, great move. 1 year, prove it deal. That works. Everything else, what's going on here?
I know. Pierce, I believe we have you on record here. Like the past couple weeks in the show, I think at one point you said you were going to take the Jags to win the AFC South, and I think the Super Bowl may have even been in that conversation as well. You got to be feeling great after yesterday, man.
What the hell, Pierce?
Yeah, I definitely feel a lot better. Now, none of the moves are great. These were all good moves. Now, the thing with Christian Kirk, you have to overpay him. You have to overpay if you're Jacksonville. No one's coming to Jacksonville unless they get a good contract. But what Jacksonville's signaling by overpaying is convincing not just their fans, which they needed to do to tell their fans, hey, we're committed to winning. It tells other role player free agents that, hey, maybe this is the spot for you. Come on in. We're building something here. But probably the best move was to get the guard that they signed, because now that gives them even more flexibility with the draft. They may not need to go after Evan Neal. They can probably go after Aiden Hutchinson, or they can trade down and then continue to upgrade in a bunch of different spots. And if one of those receivers doesn't work out, that's fine. They've got plenty of weapons, plenty of options. I think that they have a whole deck of cards that they're working with here, and they're in a really good spot this early in the season.
Do they have plenty of weapons though? Like I keep hearing this how great this Jacksonville wide receiver core is.
It's like
I don't see it. I mean, it's the same as last year. It's the exact same group as last year. It's just different names.
No, and they're all richer. They're all making more money, but like Steve said,
okay, good.
Down
That's
in his shoe.
I apologize.
Down in his shoe. That is where expectations are. You've won 4 games total the past 2 years.
They're practicing Porsche 911s instead of Chevy Impalas. Let's give them that.
Wow.
All right, guys. One dude who will not be receiving the football from Trevor Lawrence, that is DJ Chark. So he signs a 1-year deal with the Lions. Steve, was there no market for this guy? And what do you think his fantasy value is going to be with Detroit, now catching balls from Jared Goff?
Well, put it this way. If there was no market for DJ Chark on a 1-year, $10 million deal, then I don't know what half of these NFL teams were even thinking. Like, that feels like a steal for somebody who has tremendous upside. But that upside is now going to be capped because he's going to be catching balls from Jared Goff, who just doesn't throw downfield at all. He threw downfield at one of the lowest rates in the league last year. 9.1% of the time he was going downfield of 20 yards or more. That doesn't exactly suit the kind of player that DJ Chark is. So that's going to cap his upside tremendously. But that being said, he instantly moves up to the wide receiver 1 in this offense because they have probably the worst group of receivers in the NFL last season. So there is some upside there with that, but it doesn't particularly go to the game that DJ Chark likes to play. He's not going to be one of these guys that's going to be catching these short early downs, or maybe he's going to have to if he at least wants to get the ball, but that wasn't the team that the Lions were last year either. They ran the ball one of the highest rates on early downs, so kind of confused by the move. And if that's how limited Chark's market was, it's really puzzling because there's a lot of teams, hello Green Bay, that could use another receiver.
Okay. Jeff, how do you feel about this one?
Pretty similar to Steve. I'm a little bit more optimistic. Like, I do think the Lions potentially, I think they're just going to be a little bit better last year. I mean, we did talk about this team a lot, mainly Pierce. during the regular season, and they were probably better than their record indicated, right? And Jared Goff, once upon a time, had a pretty good connection with guys like Sammy Watkins and Brandon Cooks downfield. Now it's a different offense, but the targets are going to be there. Like if Jared Goff is throwing downfield at any game next year, it's going to be to DJ Chark, because Amon-Ra St. Brown essentially becomes the underneath guy, and he did last year, and he's good in that role, I think. But Chark will be the player stretching the field all games. And if the Lions are running the ball a little bit better and they're just a little bit better team, there's going to be more open looks, more one-on-one situations for Chark. So it's a great risk-reward signing. It's like the exact opposite of the Christian Kirk signing. It's a perfect risk-reward upside signing. You can get away from it quickly if you want. You're not setting up this guy up for huge failure either. He knows he's coming in. He's got to prove it. You're not giving him all the money up front like you did with Kirk. So I think Chark could be very sneaky next year, potentially, especially on DraftKings for DFS. I mean, this player is going to probably go off a couple times with those long touchdowns.
Yeah, Pierce, Pro Bowler in 2019, and on your Lions, the Lions that you said, pretty much a 500 football team. Maybe they'll be a winning football team this year.
Super Bowl champions, actually, I'm pretty sure, like 2022.
This is going to sink then. This is if you are signing Jaguars castaways, that's not a good look. I mean, if anyone knows if he's still got it or not, it would be the team that he played for. And if they say, nah, he doesn't have it, and they let him go, then he probably doesn't have it. If they're willing to go with Kirk, then I think Kirk's probably the better option. He's not a good receiver, and this is not a good team, even though they were pretty much 500 still. That's barely 500, we'll say now. Look at his 1 year, that 2019 Pro Bowl season where he caught 73 passes, over 1,000 yards. The Jags were a 6-10 team. They were always playing from behind. They were always in pass-heavy scripts. They were often playing against softer coverage because they were losing. You look at him over the course of his career, he just really hasn't done much. I'm sure, like Jeff mentioned, there will be weeks where he'll be relevant, just like Amon St. Brown was relevant several times, especially in games where Detroit's getting blown out, even though they did keep it close half the time. But I'm not excited about this. This is completely irrelevant to me.
Yeah, he's posting a lot of videos showing him moving well, running well after that season-ending ankle injury last year. Guys, that's all the time we have to talk about the NFL, but I'm sure there'll be a lot more news to break down with you as the week goes on. So appreciate the help. We're going to poke over to the NBA after this, DFS and sports betting around the association. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. I am Emerson Ncaa, but I am not alone. We got a couple DraftKings contributors here. Actually, one, Gary and Thorne, and then RotoWire's Nick Whalen. They're here to talk some basketball. So this segment is called NBA Playing the Zone. We have 4 games on the slate tonight. You guys are going to play some zone on these games. So one of you will give me the best DFS play, and the other a bet on the DK Sportsbook. Let's go Grizzlies Pacers. So Garion, give me your top DFS play in this one.
Yeah, I'm tempted to get a little clever here and say something like Dylan Brooks, who might see his minutes go up a little bit, is probably going to have a ton of shot attempts with no Ja Morant tonight, or likely no Ja Morant tonight. We know this is a guy who is not afraid to get his shots up, but I think he just have to eat the chalk on this one, and Tyus Jones is the best dollar-for-dollar play in this contest. I mean, we've seen Tyus Jones the last 2 times he's started in place of Ja Morant just have massive DFS performances. He's actually had the exact same usage rate in each of those games. It was 25.3%, and that led to 30.75 DraftKings points in the first time this occurred of those 2 games, and then 44.25 DraftKings points in the most recent examples. So at $3,400, he's going to be an exceedingly popular play on this small slate, but I think you almost have to treat it like a free space. He's just too cheap for what his role is going to be.
Nick, where are you looking at on the sports book for Grizz Pacers?
Tyrese Halliburton over 16.5 points tonight. He's gone over this number fairly easily in 6 of his last 8. It's a concerningly low number, especially with both Chris Duarte and Malcolm Brogdon potentially not playing in this game. So maybe if those guys are ruled out, we see that number creep up a little bit. So if you do like it, I would jump on it now. But Tyrese Halliburton over 16.5, to me, that's the number one player prop from this game that stuck out.
All right, Nick, take us over now to DFS. Let's talk Nets Magic here. We've got some expensive dudes, as expected, as usual, on the Nets.
Yeah, I don't really trust the Magic night to night for a number of reasons in DFS. I'm willing to pay up for Kyrie here. You know, he's at $10,200. As we saw just last week, he has 50, 60, 65 plus DraftKings point upside on the right night. He's looked fantastic essentially whenever he's in the lineup. Obviously, that has not been the headline around Kyrie all season, but this is a Magic team that, you know, hemorrhages points. The defense has actually been a little bit better of late. The offense has been horrific. Certainly a team that you still want to target. And Kyrie Irving, counting tonight, only has 4 more games based on the current New York City mandates, which don't seem to be changing anytime soon, at least not before the end of the regular season. So he's only got 4 more opportunities to play. I think he makes the most of it tonight.
All right, Garion, where are you going here on the sports book?
Yeah, I'm going to keep following the Magic under. I mean, they are just a team that is – they're enticing in a sense to the over because they had been playing at one of the highest paces in the NBA for pretty much the duration of February, but that number's come down so far in March. And the other trends that we're seeing so far, and actually this number is now up to 232. It was 231 earlier this morning. So I even like the direction that line is moving. They have, in the 7 games they have played in March, the Eastern Conference's worst offensive rating and its best defensive rating. That is probably the combination you most want when you are hunting unders on a slate. I know the Nets can score. I know the Nets aren't exactly known for their defense either, but I just don't think Orlando's equipped and that roster is built to have many games where the total gets up over 230 points. So I will ride the under here.
Gare Bear, Pistons Heat. Start us on the fantasy side.
Yeah, I think you have to start at the top here. I think Cade Cunningham, the way the Pistons are utilizing him right now, seems like they really want him to try to get the Rookie of the Year. I'm trying to figure out why exactly they're riding him as hard as they are. Maybe just trying to get some rookie reps and all that jazz. But his last 6 games, he is averaging 39 minutes a night. And that has, that kind of volume has obviously translated to some good numbers. He's averaging 23.7 points, 8 rebounds, and 6.7 assists per game. And that has coincided with a 6-game run where he is averaging over 46 DraftKings points per game. So I think at 8,300, I'm not saying he's a value, but I do think he's $500-600 too cheap considering what his production has been recently. I know the Heat are a tough matchup, but I really don't care about matchup when you're playing 40 minutes a night.
Waylon, what Pistons Heat bet stands out to you on the DK Sportsbook?
The one that jumped out was Cade Cunningham's point prop in this game, which is 20.5, and it's pretty heavily shaded toward the under. And like Gary just laid out, he's been in the midst of maybe his most consistent stretch of the entire season. He scored at least 20 points in 7 straight games. But, this line indicates that there's a pretty heavy feeling that Cade maybe goes under on 20.5. It's minus 125, overs plus 100. So that's what jumped out to me. I mean, I still wouldn't necessarily back off of Cunningham in DFS. Obviously, he can provide a lot more than scoring, but that's worth noting. I like the under 215 in this game. Neither team has been scoring a ton of points lately. Obviously, Miami, one of the best defenses in the league. And Cade Cunningham aside, there's not a ton of other pieces that you love in this Detroit Pistons offense. I mean, Sadiq Bey runs really hot and cold. And other than that, you have a collection of kind of, just random pieces essentially around this roster. And then one more that I'll throw out quickly, Kyle Lowry, over 10.5 points. I mean, it kind of speaks to the player that Lowry's been this season, that this number is now so low. He scored 8 combined points in his first 3 games back from his latest absence. But he had 14 the other night against Minnesota. The minutes are still there. I think this number is just a little too low given Lowry's pedigree.
All right, Suns Pelicans here, guys. This is going to be the fourth game to tip tonight on this 4-game slate. So, Nick, who are you looking at in DFS on DraftKings?
So this entirely hinges on CJ McCollum for me. We know Brandon Ingram is not going to play. Willie Green said yesterday that, McCollum is still in protocols, but there's considerable hope that he's going to be able to test out sometime before tonight's game. So if he plays, I kind of like just rolling with McCollum at 9,400. It is a high price, but he's clearly the number one option for them with Brandon Ingram out. I think that the fact that he's probably going to carry an injury tag for most of the day maybe leads to lower ownership tonight. So that's the number one thing I'm keeping my eye on. If McCollum doesn't play, I think we're going to see a lot of pivoting over to Jose Alvarado at 4,300. And I don't mind it, but you just have to be prepared that you're not going to be the only person doing that. He's coming off of 10 assists, 6 steals, and 16 points, although that was against the Houston Rockets on Sunday. So kind of a major caveat there.
All right, Gary, and bring us home here with your DK Sportsbook pick for Suns Pelicans.
Yeah, I mean, as Nick alluded to, the big name here is CJ McCollum. That's the big news on this slate, so much so that we don't have any player props listed yet for this contest. So I'm just going to look at the spread here, and I will back the Suns -5.5. Don't need too much analysis on why betting Phoenix in any circumstance is a pretty good idea, but I will say they are 14-9 ATS as road favorites so far this season. And in the month of March, their 9.7 net rating is the second best mark in the NBA. So even without Chris Paul, they've been operating as an elite team. If CJ McCollum doesn't play, I just see this number moving drastically. And even if he does play, I still think the Suns can win this game by more than 6 points.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for the help with basketball stuff today. We are going to talk golf stuff with Jason Sobel and Jeff Ulrich right after this quick break. A little bit down the stretch. But we have DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich, and we got the Action Network's Jason Sobel here to preview, look at some of the early odds here for the final stop on the Florida Swing, the Valspar Championship down there in Tampa. Before we do that, though, guys, Cam Smith winning a Wild Players Championship. So what can you take away from this 5-day event? Or are you throwing like most of it just out the window, Jason, because of the weather and the delays? I mean, a lot of luck went into play for these guys, depending on where they teed off.
Yeah, no doubt. So I think what you take from it are maybe the good things. You look at Cameron Smith and say, this is a guy who can beat some really good competition. This is a guy who down the stretch can play some really gutsy golf and win a big-time event. So I take that from it and things of that ilk. Keegan Bradley played really well. Victor Hovland might be the best player in the game if he doesn't have to chip at all, but when he has to chip, that short game is going to fail him down the stretch. What I don't take from it is things like Colin Morikawa and Xander Schauffele, Brooks Koepka, each of whom is teeing it up this week at the Valspar. They all missed the cut. They were all on the wrong side of the draw. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for this week. Doesn't matter for next year at the Players. Doesn't matter down the road at all.
Yeah, no one hates Victor Hovland more than Daniel Berger today. That is for sure. Jeff, we talked about a lot last week where in the past, you look at the track record for a lot of these guys at TPC Sawgrass, they're going to have bad years. So you're probably not panicking either, seeing some of the big names not make the weekend.
No, exactly. I mean, it's a high variance event to begin with, and then you throw in whatever was happening, the blizzard down in Florida that happened this week, and it just creates like a weird environment. I mean, agree with Jason 100%. You have to give credit to the players who played well, and I think for the rest of this Florida swing too, like you can just add it. I mean, to players' history here. Another good result in Florida. I mean, certain players just play well on these types of courses because they're all very similar. A lot of water, a lot of pressure on approach and tee to green games. So Cam Smith, he has become sort of like the de facto like new Webb Simpson, just in terms of how good he is with his irons, just how clutch a putter he is. And it's that you should be giving him full credit for, because we've already seen it this year earlier, when he won the Tournament of Champions, obviously. But this player is going to be competing on these types of courses, man, for the next 5-10 years or whatever, because he's just so good in that facet of his game that when he's even in moderate form, with his long irons and stuff, I mean, he's just a fantastic player on these types of setups. So,
well, Jeff, in terms of like this week at the Valspar, Victor Hovland, Justin Thomas, both have the best odds to win this thing at plus 1,000. Do you prefer one over the other?
I do. And, Jason already sort of foreshadowed my answer here with, Victor Hovland's, problems around the green. It's great that he's striping. He's absolutely striping the ball. It's incredible, some of the stats he's putting up, Victor Hovland. But Justin Thomas is the more complete player. And you look at these two players' records in Florida, too. What has Justin Thomas already done? He's won at Honda. He's won at the Players. His record at the Valspar, it's got 2 missed cuts, but it's also got 3 top 20 finishes. He's also won an event. He's also won at Quail Hollow, at the PGA Championship in 2017, which I think sets up very, very similar to this week's test at Copperhead. Those two courses tend to be very correlated as well, just in terms of past winners, players who do well here. So Justin Thomas, he was T33 last week, but a late water ball there sort of plummeted him down a few spots. And his game was complete. He gained strokes on approach. He gained strokes off the tee, which he's done in a couple starts now. And he's gaining strokes around the green, which Hovland just isn't doing. So I would take Justin Thomas. I think Justin Thomas has gone over a year now without a win, and I think he's very ready to get back on track. And I like this setup for him this week.
Yeah, Jason, Hovland had some tremendous highs, including that ace on hole 8. I believe that was yesterday at the Players. But as you mentioned, there were some sloppy mistakes in there, too.
Yeah, really, around the greens. I mean, he was ranked 216th out of 217 on the PGA Tour in strokes gained around the greens. That's terrible. He needs to improve that part. Really, he's an anomaly in the game of golf right now, because you look at every other player in the top 10, you say they pretty much do everything pretty well. Maybe they have some strengths as opposed to others that they're a little more neutral on, but none of them have a big detriment, a big negative in their games like Victor Hovland around the green. So it's really pretty inspiring, I guess, to those of us who struggle with parts of our games that, hey, he can become a top 5 player on the cusp of being number 1 in the world very, very soon. It's very possible. If indeed he can shore up that short game, he's going to be really good. As for Hovland versus JT this week, I'm going to ride the fence. I like each of them. I don't love each of them, especially at the current number they're opening at. Quite frankly, I'm fading the top of this board this week. I think it's another weird week. I think a lot of these guys are dead tired, running on fumes after a long Players Championship, and I'm going to go elsewhere instead.
Yeah, it feels like JT has really found another level just of like ball striking right now, and that was definitely on display at the Players. Jeff, your guy Louis at plus 1,600 this week, T42 finish at the Players. Tell me why he's worth a look at this number. It's a good thing Reed's not here, because he was very angry talking about Louis in our group exchange.
I mean, I'm not responsible for Reed getting on the Louis days and trade last week. I don't think I mentioned him once last week, and I'm not taking the bait again this week. Look, pal, obviously we should not be betting Louis Oosthuizen at a plus 1,600. Come on. I mean, like, we made our attempt at the Honda Classic. At least we're getting like plus 2,200 that week. This is ridiculous. You've got Dustin Johnson at plus 1,800. You've got Hatton and Fitzpatrick there at plus 2,500. You cannot bet Louis this week, obviously. I'm going to go over there and say that, and I'll be very clear on that. But, yeah, there are some players up here who, if you're not interested in taking like a Hovland or a JT at plus 1,000. I mean, I think Hatton is probably my favorite at plus 2,500. It's very close between him and Fitzpatrick. Both guys playing extremely well, but Hatton is just a player who, when he gets it all going, I mean, I just like his upside more. He's been a bit more of a prolific winner. His long irons are very good. Like, I think he sets up very well for this week's test too. So Tara Hatton was, you saw him getting frustrated down the stretch. I think that might blow a few people off him, but that's just who he is. He does that when he's playing well too. So I think Hatton at plus 2,500, especially when we're comparing him to like Louis and even Xander down there at plus 1,400, I think is overvalued. I think you're getting really good value and going with one of those Englishmen this week.
All right, Jason, I know you've mentioned here live on the Sweat before. You're just like, you're not betting Louis Oosthuizen, but is there someone else like around that number you like?
Yeah, so first things first, I like Louis this week. I like everything about Louis. He's had finishes of 17th or better in each of his last 4 starts at the Valspar. He has made a home in Ocala, Florida, which isn't too far away from Tampa. Everything should be a little familiar for him. I like everything about him except that number that Jeff pointed out, 16-1, plus 1,600 for Louis Oosthuizen this week. No thank you. Not for a guy that hasn't won. I mean, it's been, a decade and a half now. He's playing events in the U.S. He still hasn't won one of them. So until he wins one, I'm going to stay away. There's not much win equity there. I don't mind the Tyrrell Hatton call. I like that a lot. I think he's playing really well. You look at other guys, and this could be another event, just as we've seen from the players in recent years, just as we've seen from the API in recent years. The international players tend to do pretty well in Florida. So you look at a Tommy Fleetwood also. You look at a Shane Lowry, guys who hit the ball really well last week. I could see each of them having another good week. But again, these guys are running on fumes. And for me, It's less about the course fit and more about their fitness and how they feel going into this week. The guys who aren't that tired, the guys who look like they've got a little bit of energy, I think should have a good week. And I wish I was there, and I was thinking about going, but if I was there, that's what I would spend all day Wednesday doing, walking up and down the range, walking around the golf course and seeing which guys sort of have a little energy, have a little pep in their step, and which guys are just dead tired, ready to go take a nap.
All right, so which ones do you expect and have pep in their step? Which ones do you expect to have energy? Like, who is your pick to win this thing?
Okay, my pick to win this week, I don't love it. I'm usually a lot more confident in my pre-tournament pick, and this is basically just based on the number, but before missing the cut last week, Gary Woodland had a pair of top 5 finishes at both the Honda and the API. Missed the cut last week, the wrong side of the draw, all that stuff. That doesn't bother me whatsoever. In fact, as I said before, I'd almost rather a guy who missed the cut than one who's sticking around playing golf through Monday evening. And so Woodland is hitting the ball much better. He's confident. We know he can win against a big field. And like I said, love the number for him this week.
All right, Jeffrey, do you love your pick?
I mean, I don't love the number on my pick, but I am going to go with Justin Thomas at plus 1,000. I just think this is a play. It's been over a year for Justin Thomas to win on the PGA Tour. We're talking about a player who's got 14 wins already on the PGA Tour in his career. He's not even 30. He's still not even really close to sniffing 30. And I just think he's ready. Everything on his game seems to be clicking. Again, his approach stats from last week would have been a lot better if not for that late water ball. So I think Justin Thomas is set up to win here. I'm not too worried about the fatigue. Again, I mean, he plays in Florida all the time. It's a short trip. I think Justin Thomas probably sweeps the board this week. And we can talk about all these players under like 5,000 that we want. But I do feel like it's time that we're getting kind of a shorter winner here, and Justin Thomas can be my pick.
It was actually tremendous golf he played. I forget which round it was because they all like blend together. But when he had that bogey-free round at the Players, he said he blacked out. I think he shot like a 369. I don't know. Kind of sounds like Julian Edlow when he's in Vegas. But anywho, guys, thanks so much. Good stuff. We're going to wrap up the show with some NHL talk right after this. All right, time for a DFS preview of tonight's 11-game slate around the NHL. Here to help, RotoWire's Paul Bruno and AJ Scholes, along with Pete Jensen, host of the Fantasy on Ice podcast for NHL.com. So, guys, we usually start every DFS segment here talking about Austin Matthews, but this time, Paul, your guy got in a little bit of trouble. Suspended for 2 games for cross-checking Buffalo's Rasmus Dahlin in the Heritage Classic. So, with Matthews off the slate at center, Paul, who are you paying up for at that position?
Well, there's a lot of leagues, other top centers in action tonight, and a few of them have tough matchups. I'm going to fade a couple of them. For instance, I prefer to fade McKinnon because of his visit to LA. They've been playing a lot of tight checking hockey, good quality hockey as well. So that'll be a tough out. I also look past Alex Barkov because of the Panthers' visit to a Sharks club that may be feeling a little bit better about their game after 2 straight wins against LA, and the return of Erik Karlsson has certainly helped on the back end. Instead, I look at the Edmonton 1-2 punch, and I opt for Draisaitl out of those 2 guys simply because he's a high-volume shooter over McDavid, who's more of a pass-first guy more often than not. They get a really good matchup against the Detroit club that's given up 27 goals in their last 5 games, and he'll cost $8,200 tonight.
Pete, who's your dude at the dot?
I like 2 guys, but I'll start with JT Miller. He's been on a tear right now. If you haven't heard, his name has been thrown around in some trade rumors because the Vancouver Canucks are a fringe playoff team, you could say, if that. But JT Miller has kept this going from before the coaching change to Bruce Boudreau, and he's even taken it a step further afterwards. 12-game point streak with 24 points in the span, 2 points per game. That matches up against any of the stars out there. And I also like Tomas Hertl. I was looking at his home splits and some of the things that Paul was just saying. Tomas Hertl has 30 points in 30 home games this season, and he's only 5,300 against the Florida Panthers at home.
All right, how much money are you spending at center, AJ?
Well, I love Pete's call on Pittsburgh's JT Miller, or soon-to-be Pittsburgh's JT Miller. But other than that, I mean, I agree with Paul on Draisaitl too. I'd rather have him than McDavid just because of that $800 price difference. You can squeeze some other players in there. But if you're looking further down at the center position, I like Rupe Hintz at 5,700 for Dallas. I know Paul's going to hate hearing that, but the fact of the matter is they're going to use Eric Kallgren in the nets tonight, making his first NHL start for the Maple Leafs. So Dallas might be a good opportunity to stack here. Rupe Hintz, 5,700, plenty of points in recent production. And the Leafs are just going to try and outscore opponents for the next 2 weeks until they get Jack Campbell back.
Hey, AJ, the Metro is tight, dude. Trade deadline 1 week from today. Going to probably see some buyers there. Jonathan Huberdeau, gentlemen, standing out on the wing tonight. He's got a favorable matchup here against San Jose on a 5-game point streak. Looking at his numbers in which he's racked up 8 assists. Would he be your pick, Pete, at the wing, 7K and above, or do you like another guy?
I actually just like a guy a tad below, Kyle Connor, 6,800. But I do like Huberdeau, but I like the price point better on Kyle Connor of the Winnipeg Jets. Talk about inconsistent teams. The Winnipeg Jets have been so topsy-turvy this year. But look at what Connor's done from a goal-scoring standpoint. He's among the league leaders. He's got 15 points and 43 shots on goal. 43 shots on goal. Talk about a high floor in his past 10 games. So, yeah, give me Kyle Connor on the wing as a spend-up option. I love what he's doing through thick and thin for the Winnipeg Jets this season.
All right, AJ, which dude you getting after on the wing?
I'm going to go a little bit further down and actually all the way down here on the wing with the Robertson brothers. I'm going to use both of them. Start with Jason from Dallas. He comes in at 6,200, 8 goals in his last 5 games. Again, I talked about the prime matchup with Toronto giving up tied for the most goals allowed in the month of March. And then on the flip side, Nick Robinson comes in at 2,500, basement price tag for him, but he's the guy they're going to move into the second line wing role as they shuffle things around without Matthews. So he gets top 6. He's set to be on the number 2 power play. So at 2,500, I think he's worth a shot as well.
All right, cool. Paul.
You know, you asked about over 7,000, and AJ goes right off the board. How do you like that, eh? I'm going to just say that I'm going to fade a couple of the big boys. Huberdeau is more of a fast-first guy, and Ovechkin has a tough matchup despite his skill set and the 7 goals in his last 10 games. Instead, I'm looking up at David Pastrnak for 8 goals, 14 points in his last 10 games, 45 shots on goal. That's the highest shot volume of any of the guys that we're talking about today so far. And so he's the guy that I'm focusing on in what should be a favorable matchup as they visit Chicago.
All right, dude, let's go back to the blue line here, man. And we're focusing on Norris Trophy favorite Cale Makar. He's been held off the score sheet in 2 straight games after going 13 in a row with points, racking up 3 goals and 18 apples. Is it time to get back on the Makar train, AJ, or are you fading him tonight in favor of another blue liner?
Well, it's never a bad time to use Makar. He's not going to go that long without a point. If you have the space to fit him, absolutely go for it. I also like Aaron Ekblad at 6,800 tonight. He's been a little hot and cold in terms of the actual points, goals and assists here, but his shots have been really consistent. I love the matchup with the Sharks. But honestly, personally, for me, in my lineup, I'm punting this out of the back of the end zone here. I'm going all the way down on my defenseman in order to, spend up at other spots. But there are definitely guys to use if you want to pay up on the blue line.
Pete, Makar, one of 3 dudes who will cost you at least $7,000 on the blue line.
Yeah, if you want to make room for Makar, or if you want to take AJ's strategy, I would roster Josh Manson for $2,500, and I would even stack him with Cale Makar to offset his price. Josh Manson was just traded yesterday from the Anaheim Ducks to the Colorado Avalanche, so he's joining a star-studded blue line for sure. That's actually without Sam Girard, so he might get some top 4 minutes. We'll see. He's averaging a block per game this season. He has a 3-game point streak prior to the trade, which you'd love to see, and he'll absorb the offense that they're going to give him throughout the even strength minutes that he's going to see. He'll probably see 15, 20 minutes in his debut if he makes it, so keep an eye on that. And I just think that it's a good opportunity for him to kind of reach the point potential that he showed a few years back when he had 37 in a single season with the Anaheim Ducks.
All right, Paul, how much are you willing to spend here on defense?
Well, I'm not going to go right up to the top, but I'm going to stick with the Colorado blue line, and the guy that we haven't spoken about is Devin Taves. He's toiled in the shadows of Makar much of the season, but he's emerged as the second highest scoring threat back there. Consider he's got 9 points in his last 10 games played, pouring a lot of shots on goal and blocking a ton as well. 16 blocks in his last 10, 28 shots on goal, averaging over 13 DK points per game over his last 10 starts. You get him for $5,700. And we've not talked about Adam Fox for a while. His stock seems to have fallen, and he's costing only $5,500. He's not scoring as many goals as most of the other top defenders, but he's sure setting a number of them up, and he's looking like a good pick tonight in a mismatch against Anaheim, a team that's given up over 4 goals per game in their last 4 starts, and Fox has 10 points in his last 10 outings. In a similar vein, I like Quinn Hughes tonight, continuing to be a steady point producer on a Vancouver team that's scoring a ton and much more than they were earlier in the season. He's got 12 points in his last 10 games played, costing $5,400 tonight.
All right, guys. Again, 11 games on the slate tonight. A busy one. Get those lineups in on DraftKings. Thanks for the help, you 3. We will be back here tomorrow for a Wednesday edition of the slate at